These animals, we don't give them a life. We torture them. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Over. And I stopped eating all of it and wearing it that day. I transitioned out of wearing it. I looked for, what's in my makeup products. It started then. And I think because I came from this heart space, I never found it difficult.
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Get ready to hear from doctors, nutritionists, experts, and everyday men and women committed to creating a powerful life in mind, body, and soul through ethical food choices. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
Well, I have to say, today I am beyond excited with my featured expert. Cheryl Moss is actually a longtime vegan. I'm a baby vegan compared to her. I'm coming up on 7 years, and Cheryl has a lot more time. And she also just started a new podcast show that we're going to talk a lot about today. And we're going to talk about the books that she's written, which are children's books to educate children on compassionate living and eating. So with that, Cheryl, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. And I guess I should tell people who I am in case they don't know and they don't look at my little name tag. It's Kathleen Gage, and I am the host of Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. And both you and I subscribe to a plant-based diet, but that's not really what we're going to talk about today. We'll probably get into that a little bit and why it's so healthy. But let's start with you being a vegan and how long you've been vegan.
Well, Kathleen, I've been a vegan almost 20 years, and I was skirting around it for quite a bit of time before that. In the 90s, I had tried a raw diet, and it was just really difficult. I found that I was always hungry, so I kind of put that aside. But I was never the same once I started that journey. I was eating a little bit of fish. I was eating cheese. I wasn't eating meat, beef. But then something happened we adopted a dog, and right around that time, I had never really had this kind of a companion animal before. I hadn't had, either I was a child or I was a single mother, raised, I was working, so I just didn't have that focus. So with this new dog, Ruby, who we rescued from California, I just fell madly in love with her. And I just thought she was it. I took her everywhere with me. It was funny because looking back on it, I would think everybody wants Ruby in their life. Of course they do. I took her to people's houses. I took her in. They were like, they were fine with it. But I finally realized, no, it's just you. They see a dog. But she was a delightful dog. We had her for 18 years. She just left us this year, actually.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. But she opened my heart. And it allowed me to start to look around and see, oh my goodness, there's all these other animals out there, and they're the same living experience that we have. And I knew there was just one day where I was talking with a friend and we were talking about this topic. And I said, you know what? I'm done. These animals, we don't give them a life. We torture them. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Over. And I stopped eating all of it and wearing it that day. I transitioned out of wearing it. I looked for, what's in my makeup products. It started then. And I think because I came from this heart space, I never found it difficult. I never found that I missed it,
right,
that I was suffering. The thought of eating it or participating in that would give me the other reaction. So I just went one day, after, looking back on it, there was a period, a transition, but there was a day where that was enough.
It's interesting because for me, I know what that day was also, and it was 6 months into being a plant-based eater because initially I would not call myself vegan. I thought vegans were crazy. Now I know that we are, and that's okay. But I kind of skirted around oh, I don't want to be judged for being vegan, even though I wasn't eating animal-based products, but I hadn't really moved into the clothing side of things. I hadn't moved into the personal products and all that. I was at the grocery store walking by the meat department, and by that point, I had watched all the documentaries, Cowspiracy, Earthlings, you name it. I've probably watched it, read a lot of books. And so I was getting this information, and it hadn't hit at a heart level yet until I walked by the meat department. And all of a sudden, I just felt all this pain and suffering. And I really felt it. And I started crying. And it was like, how could I have been so blind? And it was that point that was really the catalyst in the moment where there was no going back. And when you think about people who say, well, I could never be vegan, what comes up for you around that?
Well, we've all been lied to, and we all have our traditions and we have our comforts and our patterns. And to ask anybody to make a change is a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand it, but I know that they could. What I think is, oh, yeah, you could, because I did it.
Right.
You know.
Well, and I was 64 when I made the change, so for me to judge somebody who's in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, or judge anybody without trying to educate and bring awareness to it. Now, it's so interesting when you talk about being lied to. Right now, the whole issue with Make America Healthy Again, they're trying to get whole milk back in the schools. And it's like, are you flipping kidding me? And, we could go down a rabbit hole with that, but it's just, we have continuously been lied to. So what I love about what happened as a result of COVID is so many people became aware by going onto social media, onto the internet, and they had a lot of time on their hands. So they started doing some research. And I think we had a greater opportunity and opening as a result of COVID and people looking at what can I do to improve my health. Now, I want to talk about the fact that you just started this. I mean, we're talking a brand new podcast show. You've been working on it for a while. You have some amazing guests coming up.
I do.
It's incredible. You
Yes.
have the likes of John Oberg. You've got Linda Middlesworth. You've got Dr. Salish Rao. I mean, the list goes on and on. Tell us about the podcast. What's the name of the podcast, and what motivated you to start that particular theme around a show?
The podcast is Better Life for Animals. And I knew that I wasn't doing enough. I didn't feel like I was doing enough. I wake up every day going, what can I do for the animals? How can I be of service? And I had written 3 books. I'm an active donator. I participate with Mercy for Animals, among others. I'm in vegan Toastmasters. I have some vegan friends. So I had been cultivating a network to quite frankly, sustain me, because you know how sad this and lonely this can sometimes feel. But there's just that, like piece of sand in my shoe is what I like to call it. And it's like, you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough. And what can you do? What else can you do? And it's funny, if I may tell the audience, Kathleen, that I had met you on a Zoom call a couple of years ago. And I was very taken with your presence and your energy. And I thought, this lady's got it all going. But I didn't know it then. But I look back on it and I go, I wasn't ready for this then. So fast forward 2 years, about 6 months ago, I ran into an offer on, I think, my email again, something you were offering. And so I signed up and listened to you talk about, how to get your visibility out there. And I really, something told me, I was still nervous, but something told me, push this, keep going. So I reached out to you privately and said, I would like to talk to you. you and I had a conversation, and I've told a lot of people this. I said, well, I know I want to I want to do more. I think I'm ready for a podcast. And you're like, okay, okay. Well, why don't you journal about that for a month and get back to me? We'll talk again in a month. So while that happened, and I thought that was an interesting answer because you weren't, you're looking for people who really want who are really committed, I think.
Right.
This isn't easy. So you got to have people that are ready to show up to the party. So I went to a conference, and I got this sense while there that a lot of these people put their energies in sanctuaries, and there are all these little unsung heroes in this cause, and they're not getting the light. I see a lot of, we see a lot of, the vegan products, which are fabulous. I'm not putting it down, but they're selling something, and they're making money just like another product. And that's all great, and we need that. But what about all the people who are, working with these animals, who are the investigators, who are keeping, these poor animals that have been, in factory farming the rest of their life in peace and comfort? That is a big job. So I thought, you know what? I don't care a lot about that. That seems like maybe an opportunity for us to have an impact because, on social media, they're always having fundraisers. They're always trying to get by. So I thought, you know what? I have a voice. I can talk about this. So that was I thought that might be an angle. We had our follow-up call, and you said, I think there might be something to that. You did a little research, and we decided together that yes, this was a worthy endeavor, and that's what started the podcast.
Well, it's interesting because as you've been interviewing people, one of the things that I've been really taken with is how grateful these people are, the ones who are donators, their employees, their volunteers, their CEOs, their founders, and just truly how grateful they are to have somebody shine a spotlight on what they're doing. Because as you've said on more than one interview that will be rolling out, it's a very thankless job. And, myself, we have a small private sanctuary that we fund ourselves. We've got rescue horses, chickens, a rooster. We've got 2 dogs right now, but we've had ferrets, we've had goats, we've had, you name it, we've probably had it. And all of this is self-funded. I've done a couple of crowdfundings, and, I never really looked at it from the perspective of the big sanctuaries, the ones that have hundreds of animals, that these animals go there and they're there for life, and they're being given the opportunity to find out what love is. Because we actually had a rescue that had been a puppy mill dog, and she was about 10 when she came to us, a complete wreck. We thought we were going to have to let her go. And it turns out that with proper veterinarian care and proper nutrition and a lot of love, she thrived for 4 years. And every day I just felt so blessed to be able to give her the love that while she was in a cage, she literally was flat on one side because she had been in a cage all her life. And she got to experience love like nothing she ever could have imagined. And it really, to me, I felt so loved. But when you talk to these people from the sanctuaries, and before we get into that, I want to remind people that you are listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, and I'm here with Cheryl Moss, who is with Better Life for Animals and betterlifeforanimals.com/podcast, where you can find her new podcast. And I would encourage people, go listen to the episodes, watch the episodes, and really find out what's going on. And please, review the podcast, do a rating, share it with other people, because we're doing this on a grassroots level, and we really want to get the word out. Because as you think of the people that you've been interviewing, what would you say is the number one challenge most sanctuaries deal with?
Oh, finances. They have all the capacity they have all the capacity in their hearts. They're committed. They're going to see it through. They're reliable, but they can't do it. We've had people that have lost their fences because there's been animals that have intruded. We've had vet bills they can't afford. They have there have been injuries. People that work there, they don't have enough manpower, and that if you don't have the volunteers, that's an expense. So absolutely money.
And what are some of the creative ways that people are actually raising funds? What you mentioned one in a show where they're selling a fence post for
Yes.
$25. And what are some other creative ways that you've heard of sanctuaries raising money?
Well, I think what I see most is they will focus on or highlight a specific animal and tell you a little bit about them.
Hmm.
George the donkey as an example, and he came from, a sad situation and he's doing really well, but he needs medical help. His arm is broken. We need $500. Would you please help? I see a lot of that. But I think people respond to that individual animal because just like our pets, you know, we'll do anything for our pets, right? And I think once people get to see, oh, this chicken's name is Henry, and rings the bell every morning, or, when they start to see, for lack of a better word, the humanity
Hmm.
in other animals, I think that they realize, oh my goodness, there's more out there. There's all of these animals that have feelings just like we do, that have wants and needs just like we do. And so those are the ones that I think are the most effective. That one and the one you mentioned about, you may own a picket, post
Right.
with your name on it. I love that. I think people like the idea of being able to put their name on something. Like if you see, you go to I don't know, a symphony or what have you, and they built it and you'll see the bricks on the ground where
Right.
everybody donated. People people like to see that they feel like they've made a contribution and they've made a difference.
And they have. And one thing I have to say that I love what you're doing with your three books, and I want to talk about each book individually, but you're giving 100% of net proceeds to I believe it's Mercy for Animals, and your goal is what let's talk about some outlandish goals.
I want to give $100,000 to Mercy for Animals before I retire. That's my
Excellent.
goal. They
Excellent.
know that. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. And that takes a lot of work because raising even $100 for an animal sanctuary is a lot of work. So 100,000, that's a huge undertaking, and that really is one of the reasons for the podcast. And you have your three books. So let's talk about what motivated you to write the books. As I recall, you started them as a result of milk being thrown away during the pandemic.
Correct.
Let us
So
know
during
about
the
that.
pandemic, there was a celebrity chef on NPR talking about how milk was being poured out and basically drained out because they didn't have the distribution channels in place. And his idea was, well, what the government needs to do is turn it over to the restaurant industry because we can take care of it.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking at the time, no, that's not the way we should be going. What we should be doing is ending this cruel system to begin with. And maybe this is the opportunity where everybody is shut down, like you said, and everybody's seeing things differently. Maybe we will, do away with this cruel practice. So I wrote a book called Gabriel about that, about how, because as we know, these poor cows are impregnated continually. And if it's a male calf, they're separated. Well, they're both separated from their mothers, and that becomes veal.
Mhm.
So my story was about a little calf named Gabriel and how he was basically rescued and found, you know, the town got to see, oh my goodness, this cow is sweet and loving and misses his mother and, all those things that I just can't believe how I think because people are eating those animals, they don't want to look at
Right.
what's going on with them. It's easier when it's your dog and your cat because we don't in this country eat dogs and cats, So I was just trying to shine a light on that farm animal. And once I did that, I thought, well, wait, I have to consider the others. So I also wrote a book called Cluck, which is about all the fowl, the chickens, the turkeys. There's a little bird named Cluck who's born inside of a sanctuary, and he's very fortunate, and he knows he is. But the birds get together and they look down the hill and they see basically, like a fast food chicken restaurant being built right next to a factory farm for chickens. So I wanted to be able to show this is what fortunate looks like. This is what living on your own terms looks like. And then there's what we're doing 99% of the time. And then after that, of course, I couldn't leave out the pigs because, as we all know, not that this should matter, but they are the smartest.
Mm-hmm.
They suffer greatly. We treat them horribly. And I learned a little bit about this when I did a little bit of research talking to an actual gentleman who ran a sanctuary. I think it was in Tennessee. And he was saying, the stories that we share here are true stories. I mean, pigs will find a way out. They're very smart. In my case, he was telling me, if the hurricane hits and they're flooded, if they can get out, and that's a big if, we let them go because they're no longer deemed appropriate to be slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, that's my in. And I wrote a story where it starts basically with a hurricane and how this one little guy, Pickle, finds his way to a sanctuary. So I was trying to just try to cover, of course, there are more, but I've got 3 books about, these individual stories of each factory farmed animal and how, in all cases, their situation is safe.
I love it because, we have to continually educate people because a lot of people either don't believe what they see about factory farms. They think it's conspiracy theory. They think it's all made up, or they don't want to see it. And, there's people who say, well, what's going to happen to all those animals on factory farms? It's like they will cease to exist if we quit breeding them because they're forced bred, and
right.
Which is so sad.
Yes.
And now remind people where they can find you, Cheryl.
I can be found at betterlifeforanimals.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. We have a YouTube channel now where betterlifeforanimals.com/podcast,
Mm-hmm.
where we've just started a whole series of podcasts highlighting these amazing authors, advocates, and sanctuary owners.
And your books can also be found on your website.
That's right. Yes, they can.
And they can be found on Amazon. And again, I want to remind people that these books are incredible. They're great for gifts for children. They're great for gifts for friends, for family members, for spouses, whatever you may want to do to contribute. But 100% of net proceeds will go to Mercy for Animals. And once the $100,000 goal is met, I'm speaking it into the future because I speak into manifest. And once that happens, then the funds will be distributed elsewhere. But, one of the most unique ways that I actually was able to participate in making a donation to a sanctuary was years ago. There was an organization called Blog Pause, and it was a blogging organization for people within the pet industry. And Yvonne DeVita is the one who was the founder of this. And she contacted me off of the internet. I think it was when I did my fundraiser for Delaney, the little breeder dog and puppy mill dog. And she said, we'd like you to come out and speak at the conference. And we don't pay our speakers, but what we do is make a donation in your name to any animal organization you'd like. And it was like $2,500. And I said, I'm in, count me in. Well, they flew me in, they put me up in a hotel. It was great. It was a wonderful experience. But what felt so good is that I knew that just by getting up and sharing my experience with people, sharing information with people that had nothing to do with the pet industry, ironically enough, it was about digital marketing. And she said, we need to learn more about that. So they brought me out. I got to do my presentation and I got to give a check for $2,500 to this sanctuary. And another one was I actually did a keynote presentation, and I asked people to donate $500 to have a half-hour consulting with me, and 100% of the proceeds was going to go back to this women's pet organization. we ended up raising like $15,000, $16,000. So I told the woman who ran it, I said,
Wonderful.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you 75%, 25% goes to this animal sanctuary. And she's like, yeah, okay. So there's all sorts of ways to raise funds and to use your skills and talents. What would you recommend to people, Cheryl, that say, well, I just don't have the money to donate? What can people do besides donating that would help the animals?
Well, at the very minimum, you can share the information. And then, if you're able, you could always volunteer. They absolutely never have enough helping hands. So there are always ways that you can participate.
And there's one big one that it's kind of the elephant in the room, and you eat an elephant one bite at a time, but we don't eat elephants. So what would be the one big one that people could do that would really help the animals?
Not eat them.
There you go. Well, that was pretty simple.
Okay.
That was pretty simple. So what are your hopes as you look at what you're doing now, and that you've thrown your hat in the ring. You are a podcaster, and I have a really, really strong feeling that this show is going to do very, very well because people are interested in helping animals, in even if it means just listening. And I will say that just by listening to the show, by watching the show, leaving a rating and a review, you are helping the algorithm numbers. So please do that. But what is your hope for the future?
Well, there are countless numbers of sanctuaries out there, countless numbers of workers who have stories, and all the animals. Just think of all the stories that we have out there that need to be told. And my hope is that we get to tell hundreds of them, because what I have learned is that we do love our pets, but that 97% of charitable donations toward animals go toward our pets.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, we have billions of all the other animals who, I think when we realize, oh, that pig and that cow are sentient beings who have lives and hopes, and they need space, and they have their little quirks, and they're just like people in that regard. They deserve to live life on their terms. I think one by one, people will find something that they connect to that will make it easier for them to make a difference, to make a transition, to go toward more compassionate eating, more compassionate living. And it may not happen overnight, but I believe once that seed is planted, it starts. You can't go back. I can't go back. You can't go back. We would never. You get to that point, and it's easy. And I'm so grateful that I'm not participating in that. As difficult as it is, as tragic as I find it, is harsh, it is brutal. But it is also something that I don't have to participate in,
Right.
and I can make a difference. And I really, truly believe that it could be changed on a dime. I was at a call on Sunday, and I think it's the climate healers.
Yes.
Where we're talking about their goal to end all of this is 2025. Not 10 years from now, not 50, one. And that may seem outrageous, but it's possible.
It is possible. And I look at what's going on with the weather patterns. I look what's going on with people's health, with the healthcare system. I mean, if you look at all of it from a holistic perspective, it really all starts with what we have on the end of our fork and
Correct.
what we have on our plate. And so many problems could be fixed, literally fixed within a matter of weeks if people just made that decision just for today. It's like, it's like in recovery, they say, just don't take that drug or drink for today. Well, food is a drug. And the way it's manufactured now, ultra processed food, it is truly a drug. And just for today, make that decision to not eat animals and to eat a healthier whole food diet. And people say, well, where do you get your protein? There's plenty of protein in plant-based foods, but I so appreciate what you're doing, Cheryl, and I'm so I just feel so blessed to know you. And the more I get to know you, the more I just adore you and I appreciate all you're doing. And I know that this show is going to do great, the Better Life for Animals podcast show. And I encourage people, please go check it out. Go to betterlifeforanimals.com and then go to betterlifeforanimals.com/podcast. You'll see all the shows as they start showing up. But is there anything that we didn't cover, Cheryl, that you'd like to cover?
Well, I want to return the favor and say, Kathleen, that none of this would be happening without you, and that I have very much enjoyed working with you. I mean, you are on it. So for anyone interested in getting the word out there and making a difference, Kathleen Gage is your woman.
And I appreciate that.
Yes. And I just think about, back to how quickly we could change. I mean, in my lifetime, when you watch any movie from the 60s, as an example, everyone is smoking. It was cool to smoke. Everyone did it. No one's smoking these days.
Right.
It's no longer cool. It's no longer okay. We need to shift the narrative around animals and around, eating meat. We don't need to eat it. It's not good for us. It's not good for the planet. It's terrible for the animals, and we just don't have to do it. So I think that's what I want to leave everyone with. It's like, it doesn't have to be this way, and it can change now.
I love it. Well, Cheryl, this has been truly delightful. This is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I've been talking with Cheryl Moss, who is the host of Better Life for Animals podcast. And again, I encourage you, check that out. Check her books out. You can find that all at her website. And I encourage all of you to really think about what you're putting into your body. Is it something that's living and will give you life, or is it something that takes it away? I really want you to think about living with compassion, because the animals, your family, your community, the world depends on it. Have a great day.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.